What if everything you thought you knew about Roman Reigns was a lie? What if the stoic, dominant face of WWE, the so-called tribal chief, wasn't just molded by wrestling, but by something far darker before he ever stepped into the ring? What if Roman Reigns was living a double life? Tonight, we uncover one of the most explosive hidden stories in WWE history, a story that WWE itself has fought to keep buried. A story that has now been exposed by SmackDown general manager Nick Aldis, in a series of leaked reports, off-the-record conversations, and unsettling backstage memos. This is not just a tale of kayfabe, this is a real-life mystery that stretches back years before the Samoan warrior ever entered developmental. Before the fans. Before the Shield. Before the Bloodline. We're talking about Roman Reigns' secret life, the life WWE doesn't want you to know about. Before we go further, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because once you hear what Nick Aldis allegedly revealed behind closed doors, you won't watch WWE the same way again, because this isn't just a story about Roman Reigns, this is a story about identity, about power, and about how far WWE might go to protect its golden child. Let's begin. According to a leaked recording obtained by an anonymous source close to the SmackDown locker room, Nick Aldis, a veteran in the business and current authority figure on Friday nights, has been talking. Quietly. Cautiously. But talking nonetheless. In a private conversation, Aldis reportedly said, "Roman isn't who you think he is. The guy you see on screen, that's not who he used to be. He had an entirely different life. One that almost cost him everything." The room fell silent. The source claimed Aldis made that statement not on camera, not in an interview, but in a hushed, off-the-record meeting with creative staff following an unplanned backstage blow-up between Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa after WrestleMania. So what was Aldis referring to? Let's go back. Before he became Roman Reigns, he was Lady Joseph Anoa'i, the youngest son of wrestling royalty. But long before he ever stepped between the ropes, Lady was surrounded by a different kind of power. A different kind of danger. Sources familiar with his early years in Pensacola, Florida, claim that Roman was involved in a tight-knit, secretive underground circle, not criminal in the traditional sense, but powerful, influential, and off the grid. A cousin of a former WWE road agent told investigators, before football, before wrestling, Roman ran in private circles. He wasn't just another high school athlete. There were meetings, retreats, invitations-only events in the Florida Panhandle. You didn't get in unless you were somebody. But what were these events, what made them so secret, and why is Nick Aldis reportedly warning others backstage about them now? Digging deeper, we discovered a trail of local reports going back to 2005, including sealed police files from Bay County and Okaloosa that referenced a private citizen group, organized in rural estate homes outside Destin. These files have never officially named Roman Reigns, but a redacted name and birthdate match Reigns exactly. One entry lists the subject as a witness to private domestic arbitration between unnamed parties, which seems odd for a then 20-year-old college athlete. More telling. The report mentions that the subject was shielded by protective representation from outside the state of Florida. Legal counsel not from Florida. For a random domestic arbitration, it didn't add up. One former WWE scout, who asked not to be named, described Reigns' early rise as too smooth, too fast. He wasn't just another football player trying to wrestle. Doors opened for him like they don't for most people. It was like he already had people backing him, people high up. What kind of backing? That's where things take a darker turn. One now retired FCW trainer claimed Roman had no-showed 3 mandatory sessions in 2011 but faced 0 consequences. Anyone else would have been cut, the trainer said, but not Joe. He had immunity. Even back then. Immunity from what? That's when Nick Aldis' recent private statements become even more chilling. According to the leak, Aldis told another producer, "The problem isn't that Roman's dangerous. It's that he knows things. He's been in rooms most of us never get near. And the worst part is, WWE bet on him because of that, not in spite of it." The comment left many backstage staffers stunned. Was Nick Aldis implying that Roman Reigns' past connections weren't just tolerated, but leveraged? That they were part of why WWE made him the face of the company? Let's follow the paper trail. A 2009 incident report from Florida State University, where Roman briefly attended before transferring, notes that an unnamed student-athlete was placed in protective disciplinary redirection after involvement in an off-campus event involving private security and restricted guests. The report is vague. Intentionally vague, but a Freedom of Information request revealed that one of the attendees at that event was a man later linked to a private intelligence contractor operating out of Tampa Bay. Another report, from 2010, suggests that a certain LA, the initials of leaderAbsolutely, was considered a liaison for celebrity outreach events held in Miami's high-wealth development zones. These zones are known for quiet, invitation-only fundraisers, where cameras are banned, but deals are made. Was Roman Reigns, at that time still years away from becoming the big dog, already running in elite back channels? Was he a handler? A messenger? Nick Aldis warning, he knows things. He's been in rooms most of us never get near. Suddenly feels less like gossip, and more like a whistleblower's alarm. This isn't about cheating in college football. This isn't about skipping promo class at FCW. This is about a man whose real life may have included black tie secrets, off-the-grid connections, and the kind of elite grooming most people only read about in fiction. And WWE might have known all along. There's more. In early 2020, before Roman Reigns took his pandemic hiatus, internal emails, obtained through a hacked dump from an anonymous ex-WWE employee, show a classified communication between Vince McMahon and then SVP of Talent Relations. Subject line, Leady PR strategy, final option. Attached was a 2-page draft media strategy, parts redacted, that emphasized eliminate all references to early affiliations outside athletics. Never acknowledge sealed Florida court records. Protect public identity at all costs. Now, why would WWE craft a PR strategy around erasing a man's pre-wrestling life, unless there was something they didn't want the world to see? And why, in 2025, is Nick Aldis finally breaking the silence? Aldis, known for his integrity and long road to WWE power, is not a man known for stirring drama. But insiders say he's growing increasingly uneasy about how much power Roman Reigns still holds backstage, even after being off-screen for months. We're not running a wrestling company, he reportedly told a staffer. We're running a kingdom. And he's still king, even when he's not here. That statement, chilling in its honesty, paints a picture of a locker room ruled not by booking sheets, but by loyalty, fear, and secrets. So what now? As this exposé continues, more names are being dragged in, former friends, ex-girlfriends, developmental coaches, even a mysterious DA. Listed in a redacted Florida affidavit from 2006, initials that match Roman's older brother David Anoa'i, who himself left wrestling under curious circumstances, and the common thread, they all disappeared from the spotlight. But Roman rose higher, from private meetings in Miami to secret fundraisers in Tampa, from message boy to tribal chief. Was Roman Reigns chosen by WWE because of his wrestling skills, or because of what he knew, and who he knew, as Nick Aldis continues to push for transparency backstage, and as more leaks trickle from disillusioned staffers, the question becomes harder to ignore. Is Roman Reigns the greatest WWE superstar of our time, or is he the face of a cover-up that goes deeper than wrestling? The silence from WWE has been deafening, and as the spotlight now turns toward Nick Aldis, one thing is clear. If Roman Reigns' past is exposed, it won't just shake the bloodline, it could shake the very foundation of WWE itself. To understand just how deep Roman Reigns' past might go, and why Nick Aldis has allegedly grown terrified of the truth coming out, we have to go back even further, before the chance of Acknowledge Me, before the Thunderdome, before the Universal Championship reign that shattered records. There was silence. A long, deliberate silence that WWE insiders now say may have been purchased. That's right, settlements. A former member of WWE's internal legal team, who spoke anonymously through a secure source, claimed that during the early 2010s, specifically around the time Roman was debuting as part of The Shield, 2 hush settlements were authorized at the executive level involving third-party non-disclosure agreements. One of them allegedly involved a Florida real estate consultant, while the other referenced a private youth mentorship initiative that had previously operated in conjunction with Anoa'i family charities. While the details are still sealed, the implication is chilling. Someone from Roman's pre-WWE life had to be silenced. And fast. The same source claimed that Paul Heyman, at that point no longer running ECW but still close to Vince McMahon, was brought in to personally oversee optics and narrative control surrounding Reigns' rise. That's when the grooming began, not just of Roman's wrestling persona, but of his entire public identity. Heyman's involvement is no coincidence. Multiple WWE alumni have referred to Heyman as more than just a manager or advocate. In several backstage testimonies shared with independent wrestling journalists, Heyman is described as a handler, a fixer for McMahon's most high-risk investments. A former production assistant recalled, when Paul took over Roman's creative, it wasn't just because he liked him. It was because he was assigned to him. His job was to make the public forget everything about who Roman was before he put on a vest and walked through the crowd. This is where things spiral deeper. Because what if Paul Heyman wasn't just protecting Roman's legacy? What if he was protecting something else? Documents leaked from WWE's Private Performance Center logs include a curious note dated February 2012, Jr. Adjust PR re. LJA history, defer all inquiries to PH. LJA, Lady Joseph and OIP.H, Paul Heyman, Jr., Jim Ross, who at the time was still helping oversee talent development, in other words, a directive to bury questions about Roman's history, and redirect everything through Heyman. And what was that history? According to one anonymous source within WWE's Archives division, Roman's pre-NXT file was unusually thick, nearly 3 times the size of an average rookie's intake documentation. The reason? A background evaluation conducted by an outside intelligence firm, not a sports recruiter, not a performance center specialist, but a firm previously linked to WWE's crisis management team during the Chris Benoit investigation. Why would WWE run an intelligence-level background check on a developmental rookie, unless they were trying to confirm, or cover up, something bigger? And now, Nick Aldis may have had enough. Reports suggest that Aldis has begun quietly purging SmackDown files related to Roman's original creative pitch and locker room privileges, an action described by one insider as a preemptive firewall in case something breaks. One assistant writer said, "It's like Nick is trying to erase all evidence that he was ever part of protecting Roman. Like he knows something's coming, and he wants to be on the right side of it." But what is coming? There are whispers that an unaired documentary, produced in 2017 by a private WWE-affiliated crew, contains never-before-seen footage of Roman interacting with former government officials at an elite function in the Cayman Islands. That documentary was shelved, never aired, never even mentioned again. The footage was allegedly destroyed. But a single still frame, preserved in an anonymous Dropbox leak from a former WWE editor, shows Roman, dressed in civilian clothes, standing shoulder to shoulder with a now-disgraced politician linked to financial secrecy scandals. Why would a rookie WWE talent be at that event? Why would WWE silence its own production crew? And why would Nick Aldis, years later, reference that event in a meeting as something he refused to be part of? That quote, confirmed by 2 sources, paints Aldis not just as a GM, but as a man who may have reached his moral limit. But it's not just Aldis, others are coming forward. One former WWE cameraman, fired in 2023 under unexplained circumstances, told a journalist last month, "We weren't just filming wrestling. We were filming mythology." And the scariest thing is, I think Roman believed it too. Because someone told him he was more than a wrestler. Someone told him he was untouchable. And maybe, he was WWE's legal muscle. The iron wall of Vince McMahon's influence, the unwavering loyalty of Paul Heyman, and now, the sudden silence from the entire Anoa'i family. Not one Bloodline member, not Solo, not Jimmy, not even the Usos, has acknowledged the rumors surfacing backstage. And perhaps that silence is the loudest admission of all, because if Roman's secret life is finally exposed, then the empire falls, the character collapses. The story ends, and WWE will have to answer for something far worse than a failed push. It'll have to answer for who, and what, they built their entire decade around. Nick Aldis may be the first domino, but what happens when the next one falls? Is this the real reason Roman Reigns hasn't returned? Is this why, every time his name trends, the company scrambles to regain control of the narrative? And is this the end of the tribal chief? Only time and truth will tell. If Roman Reigns' rise was a calculated ascent, then who were the people left behind? That question haunts the corridors of Florida Championship Wrestling to this day, the forgotten launchpad of WWE's next generation. While Roman became the big dog, others vanished without a trace, and now, for the first time, some of those voices are beginning to whisper, because not everyone stayed silent. One former FCW coach, whose name is being withheld for their protection, has come forward in an explosive off-the-record interview. They described the early days of Roman's training not as a struggle, but as a choreographed coronation. From the second Joe walked in, it was clear he wasn't like the others. There were kids killing themselves to get noticed. Joe didn't need to. Everyone already knew who he was. But it wasn't just because of his family. There were calls. Quiet calls. From people we didn't usually hear from. When pressed, the coach clarified they weren't Anoa'i family calls. These were from outside. People with accents. Legal people. It felt more like he was being protected, or positioned. That last word, positioned, came up repeatedly. Another staff member, now retired, recalls a particularly tense moment in early 2012 when Roman was abruptly pulled from a scheduled house show in Gainesville. The reason: an unnamed woman had shown up to the building. Security was called, the woman was escorted out, but no police report was filed. "We were told she was an ex," the source said. But the way people reacted? It was like they were afraid of her. Like she knew something. 2 weeks later, Roman was taken off events for family obligations. But behind the scenes, a legal settlement was being quietly negotiated. This, according to leaked emails discovered in 2024 by a digital forensics firm hired by an independent wrestling journalist. The email subject line read, LJA/FL settlement, containment required. Attached was a non-disclosure agreement. The recipient's name was redacted, but the timeline and formatting matched WWE's internal templates used for talent relations disputes. This wasn't just damage control. It was a cover-up, and she wasn't the only one. In late 2023, a whistleblower revealed a pattern of financial blackouts in WWE's internal ledger system. Periods of missing payment logs tied to off-book settlements labeled under vague categories like PR management and reputation security. One of these entries was dated March 2014, mere months after Roman Reigns began his meteoric singles push, and the amount, $375,000, paid out of a discretionary fund previously reserved for media crisis suppression. What crisis, what threat, and who was paid? Sources close to WWE's accounting team believe this payment was not related to any storyline, lawsuit, or broadcast error, but to something entirely offline. Possibly tied to a former associate of Roman's from Florida, one who has since gone completely silent on social media. A quick search of public records shows a woman, formerly listed as a local counselor and nonprofit coordinator in Escambia County, legally changed her name in 2015. And moved to Alaska. That woman once worked with a now-defunct organization connected to the Anoa'i family's community outreach efforts, an organization that abruptly shut down in 2013 after an IRS audit revealed undisclosed foreign donations. What kind of donations? And what do they have to do with Roman Reigns? Nick Aldis seems to know. In a chilling, paraphrased excerpt from a recent SmackDown production meeting, Aldis allegedly stated, "Roman's not coming back because we're one news cycle away from collapse. If his past hits the mainstream, we're done. Everything we've built burns down." That meeting, leaked by a disgruntled assistant producer, caused panic across creative. Writers were instructed to suspend all Roman-related teases. Future plans for the Bloodline were scrapped overnight. And Paul Heyman? He hasn't been seen publicly in weeks. There's growing belief that Heyman may be lawyering up, not for an angle, but for a scandal, because while fans chant for a Roman return, backstage officials are bracing for a legal fallout. In fact, WWE's legal department recently contracted a third-party crisis firm, known for managing celebrity reputations during federal investigations. The firm, whose name we won't reveal here, has one goal: prevent any leak from connecting Roman Reigns to the alleged Jane Doe settlements, private youth events, or sealed state records. They're not fighting wrestling rumors anymore, they're fighting history and the truth. It's starting to crack through. A sealed court document in Florida, obtained via a judicial leak, References an LJA involved in unlicensed mentorship operations for at-risk youth, supervised by an unauthorized external sponsor. Legal experts reviewing the case have confirmed that the initials and background match Lady Joseph and OI. This document, buried for over a decade, was nearly destroyed in a 2018 court digitization purge. But a printed copy was preserved by a local reporter who always believed there was more to the Roman Reigns origin story. She was silenced, her reporting never published, but now, the document is in circulation, and it matches perfectly with the timeline Nick Aldis reportedly feared would blow the whole bloodline wide open. So what does this mean? It means that Roman's past is no longer just a rumor. It's a time bomb ticking inside a locker room filled with lies, NDAs, and men too afraid to speak, except one. Nick Aldis, and with every whispered leak, every silent pause on SmackDown, every cancelled promo, we get closer to the edge. WWE's empire was built on a tribal chief, but behind the crown, behind the roar, behind the camera-ready stare, was a young man. Secrets that may now be too big to hide, secrets that even WWE, for all its power, may no longer be able to contain. Titan Tower was never built to leak. Its glass facade and corporate silence stood for decades as the symbol of WWE's power, unshaken by lawsuits, deaths, or internal mutiny. But now, the walls are cracking, and at the center of that collapse is Roman Reigns, because what started as whispers about an unconfirmed past has now evolved into a full-blown internal security crisis. According to insiders, WWE's private communications system, known internally as GrappleNet, has been compromised, and the source, a whistleblower. A longtime WWE employee who, until recently, operated within the Talent Relations and Legacy Management Division, has been leaking encrypted messages, internal memos, and sealed settlement discussions, all tied to one name, Lady Joseph and OI. This person, who has been communicating via a secure, international relay, claims that Roman Reigns' past was not only known by WWE, it was studied, logged, and ultimately, used. Roman wasn't just groomed for the top, the whistleblower wrote, he was selected. Handpicked not just for his family name, but because of what he had already proven he could survive and keep quiet about. And what was that? The answer, horrifyingly, may be buried in international records. One leaked memo references a joint security consultation between WWE and a private law enforcement consultant based in Toronto, the same city where Roman lived during WWE tours between 2013 and 2016. That document includes coded entries about a subject exhibiting passive compliance with legacy firewall strategies, language consistent with behavioral evaluation files used in intelligence operations. The separate line in that same memo reads, ensure PH remains intermediary. LJA cannot be exposed to direct engagement unless protocols fail. PH Paul Heyman. LJA. Lady Joseph and OI. In other words, Paul Heyman wasn't just a manager. He was a buffer. A layer of protection possibly assigned by WWE, or someone above WWE, to make sure Roman Reigns remains silent, compliant, and useful. But silence has a cost, and cracks are forming. Multiple SmackDown creative staffers have noticed strange behavior from Heyman in recent months. According to 3 separate sources, Heyman was frequently arriving at meetings late, requesting legal clearance before offering creative pitches involving Roman, demanding that all written materials referencing Roman be printed, not emailed, and then, in June 2025, he stopped showing up altogether. His official reason? Personal leave. But multiple insiders now believe Paul Heyman is cooperating with outside investigators. Quietly. Cautiously. And possibly, under pressure. Because the more these leaks spread, the more likely it is that a federal-level probe may be unfolding behind the scenes, and if that's the case, Roman Reigns may not be absent by choice. He may be silenced. Let's revisit a troubling pattern. The 3-week window of total blackouts we've observed on Roman Reigns' name across all WWE programming. No merchandise promoted. No legacy clips aired. No acknowledgement from Solo, Jimmy, or even the Usos. Why? According to a high-level executive, who requested total anonymity, WWE has triggered a full-scale digital lockdown on Roman's likeness in internal systems. It's a soft suspension. Not disciplinary, defensive. It's like they're prepping for something legal and don't want to get caught holding the match when the explosion happens. Even more alarming, the source says Roman isn't responding to WWE's private outreach. No replies. No voicemails returned, nothing but silence, which raises one terrifying possibility: Roman Reigns, the face of the company for nearly a decade, may be missing. No appearances. No video. No contact, and yet, no public statement. Why hasn't WWE confirmed his status? Why hasn't Paul Heyman been brought in to offer even a vague update? Why is Nick Aldis the only person within WWE's public-facing team hinting at a meltdown while the rest of the company hides behind ghost protocols? Because this isn't just about character damage anymore, this is about liability, this is about truth, and the truth is, someone inside WWE knows exactly what Roman Reigns did before wrestling, knows exactly who he was involved with, knows exactly what the payouts were meant to cover, and is now trying, desperately, to make sure that truth never gets out. But it's too late, because one more leak, the biggest leak yet, has just surfaced. A 2016 private briefing memo, created by a WWE-retained security consultant, references a plan called OP Tribal. The memo outlines protocols in the event that subject LJA's personal history becomes public or legally actionable. The steps include: redirect all media inquiries to legal, cease all active Bloodline storylines, suspend legacy footage and external licensing, deploy PH as narrative buffer until phase-out complete. This wasn't a storyline plan, this was a crisis response. They knew. They've always known, and now, the question isn't if Roman Reigns' secret life will be exposed. It's when Nick Aldis knows Paul Heyman may finally be talking, and the whistleblower is still leaking. The walls of WWE are closing in, and somewhere, behind all the silence, Roman Reigns is watching, waiting. Maybe preparing for the moment the world finally sees who he was, before he was tribal chief. And when that moment comes, the Bloodline won't save him, the fans won't recognize him, and WWE will have nowhere left to hide. For months, this investigation has peeled back layers of secrets, leaked files, buried settlements, and broken alliances. And now, in the final hours of what some in WWE are calling the tribal collapse, the last piece has emerged. A recorded phone call leaked. Anonymous, authenticated by voice recognition specialists, and it's the voice of none other than Roman Reigns. The audio is just under 6 minutes long. It was reportedly captured in early April 2025, days after his last known public appearance. The voice is hushed, measured, calm, but what it says is anything but in the recording, Roman speaks to someone he refers to only as M. Analysts believe this may be Michael Hayes, longtime WWE producer and talent agent. I told them I'd take the heat, Roman says. I told Vince. I told Hunter. I told Paul. If it ever got out, I'd carry it. But I'm not going to jail for them. Not for what they covered. Silence. Then he adds, they want me to disappear? Fine. But they better pray this tape never hits the light. What was Roman referring to? What tape? Theories swirl that a private video exists, shot over a decade ago, involving Roman and a meeting at a luxury estate in Florida. A meeting that also included two men, both later linked to offshore money laundering investigations and hush settlements tied to youth outreach nonprofits. WWE reportedly acquired the original tape in 2016. It was buried in a Class X archive bin in Stamford marked, "Do not duplicate." Property of VKM. That's Vince Kennedy McMahon, and now, if Roman Reigns is threatening to release it, WWE is on the verge of full implosion. But that's not the only shockwave, because just days after the call was leaked, Nick Aldis was quietly removed from internal WWE creative boards. Publicly, WWE claims Aldis remains SmackDown general manager, but insiders report he's been sidelined, silenced, possibly surveilled. Why? Because sources now say it was Aldis who smuggled out the call and Aldis who attempted to push WWE to come clean before the media did. He failed. And now he may be paying the price. Meanwhile, Paul Heyman has hired outside legal representation, not a WWE-approved attorney, but a private crisis defense firm based in D.C., known for handling corporate whistleblower fallout. Heyman has gone dark, and the Inouye family? They vanished. No appearances. No social media. No statements. A source inside the family's private management office in Pensacola confirmed they've been instructed not to speak. not even to each other. And that instruction came from someone in Stamford. The final puzzle piece is falling into place because this wasn't just about Roman's past, this was about the WWE machine, what it saw, what it used, and what it suppressed. The decade-long marketing miracle, built on something they hoped would never be uncovered, but the truth always leaks, and now, so does the fallout. WWE's board has convened multiple emergency sessions over the last 2 weeks. Shareholders are demanding clarity. Advertisers have begun asking if their sponsorships could be exposed to legal risk, and one senior executive, in a panicked moment, reportedly asked, "Do we kill the Bloodline storyline completely, or try to salvage it with Solo?" The answer? They already know it. The Bloodline is dead because this was never about kayfabe. This was about a man groomed in secrecy, propped up by silence, and finally broken by the truth. Roman Reigns will not return, not as champion, not as tribal chief, maybe not even as Roman Reigns at all. And WWE, they're already rewriting history. Legacy videos being edited, commentary archives being redacted. PR team scrubbing search engine metadata for key phrases like Jane Doe 170, FCW lawsuit, and tribal protocol. But it won't be enough, because the world has heard the voice, and once that voice speaks truth, you can't put it back in the vault. This isn't just the fall of a wrestler, it's the collapse of an empire, and when the dust settles, all that will be left is the memory of a man once called the head of the table, now buried.